They're in love with you. Not the lukewarm affection they showed during the relationship. Not the conditional care they provided when it was convenient. Not the defended attachment that came with distance and withdrawal. Real love. Crazy love. Consuming love that won't let them sleep, won't let them focus, won't let them move on. Love that makes everyone else feel wrong. Love that makes every new person feel like settling. Love that creates permanent comparison where you're the standard no one else meets. They're crazy in love with you now, after you're gone, after they lost you, after it's too late. The intensity is undeniable. The feeling is overwhelming. The love is more real than anything they felt during the relationship when you were present and available and loving them. They feel it now. Feel it consuming them. Feel it destroying their defended position from the inside because the love is too big to be defended against, and the timing seems cruel, seems incomprehensible. How can they love you most intensely after losing you? How can they feel most deeply when you're gone? How can the love arrive when it's too late to benefit the relationship? The timing isn't random, isn't cosmic cruelty, isn't mysterious phenomenon without explanation. They're crazy in love with you because you did specific thing that created the exact conditions where their defended psychology could finally allow the love that was always underneath the defending. Thing that inverted every assumption their wounded system was built on. Thing that triggered every wound their defenses existed to protect, while simultaneously proving those defenses were protecting against wrong thing. You did something that made loving you safe for the first time. Safe not because you were present and pursuing and patient. Those things made loving you threatening, because loving someone present requires sustained vulnerability their wounded system couldn't access. Safe, because you're gone. Because your absence eliminated the threat that your presence created. Because loving someone who's unavailable is safer than loving someone who's available and expecting reciprocation. Understanding what you did that made them crazy in love with you reveals the paradox of avoidant psychology, why they can only access deep love when the person is gone, what this teaches about their wounds and their limitations, and why their crazy love arriving after loss should confirm your choice to leave rather than tempt you to return to someone whose love requires your absence. The one thing you did that changed everything, what made loving you safe for the first time. The specific action that created the conditions where the avoidance defended system could finally allow the love. Understanding what you did helps you see why the timing is revealing their limitation, not proving their transformation. You stopped being available. Your complete withdrawal eliminated the pressure for reciprocation that made loving you feel dangerous during relationship. Throughout the relationship, you were available, present, pursuing, patient, waiting for them to be ready, offering love consistently, creating space for intimacy. All of this, your availability, your presence, your offering, created pressure. Not pressure you are consciously applying. Pressure their wounded system experienced just from you being there loving them. Because your presence loving them created implicit expectation. Expectation that they should reciprocate, should meet your love with equivalent love, should be vulnerable in return for your vulnerability, should give back what you're giving. The expectation felt threatening, felt like demand their defended system couldn't meet, felt like pressure that triggered their wounds about vulnerability being dangerous and intimacy leading to abandonment. Your availability made loving you dangerous, made it feel like loving you back would require sustained vulnerability they weren't capable of, made the love feel like trap. If they loved you back while you were present, they'd have to sustain that love. Maintain that vulnerability. Keep showing up emotionally in ways their wounds made terrifying. But you stopped being available. You left. You withdrew completely. You made yourself permanently unavailable in ways that eliminated all pressure for reciprocation. Now loving you is safe. Safe because you're not there expecting reciprocation. Safe because loving someone who's gone doesn't require sustained vulnerability. Safe because they can feel everything without having to act on the feeling. Can love you intensely without the terror of having to show up for that love. Your unavailability is what made loving you possible, made it safe for their system to finally allow the love that was always there, but always defended against, because your availability made that love feel too threatening to access. You proved you don't need them, destroying their fear that loving someone makes you dependent on them, which was the fear preventing them from loving you. Throughout relationship, they operated on assumption built from their wounds. Loving someone makes you dependent on them, makes you need them, makes you vulnerable to being abandoned by them. This assumption made loving feel dangerous, made it feel like loving you would make them dependent in ways that would give you power to hurt them through leaving. The fear of dependence created through loving is what prevented them from loving you while you were there. But you proved the assumption wrong. You left. You didn't just leave, you thrived. You built life without them. You demonstrated clearly that you don't need them, that you can function independently, that you're better without them than you were with them. The proof destroyed their fear, destroyed the assumption that loving makes you dependent, because you love them and you're not dependent on them. You love them and you can thrive without them. You love them and you chose yourself over staying in a relationship that wasn't serving you. The proof that loving doesn't create dependence is what made loving you safe, made them see that they can love you without becoming dependent on you, can feel deeply without that feeling, creating vulnerability to abandonment, can love someone who's proven they don't need to be loved back to function. Your thriving independence destroyed the fear that was preventing them from accessing love. Made love safe by proving love doesn't create the dependence their wounds taught them love creates. You chose yourself, demonstrating the strength they lack, which triggered their core wound while proving you're worthy of love they couldn't give during relationship. You chose yourself, left relationship that wasn't serving you, enforced boundaries that protected your well-being. Refused to continue sacrificing yourself for someone who wouldn't do work to become worthy of your sacrifice. The choosing yourself demonstrated strength, real strength. Strength to do hard thing. Leave someone you loved because staying was betraying yourself. This strength is what they lack, what their defended position prevents them from accessing. They can't choose uncomfortable growth over comfortable defending. Can't leave defended position even when defending is destroying their relationships. Can't do the hard thing of transformation. Your strength triggered their core wound. Core wound is being powerless. You choosing yourself proved they're powerless to keep you. Powerless to control whether you stay. Powerless over the loss. The trigger of core wound is painful, but the trigger combined with your strength created something else. Recognition that you're worthy. Worthy of love they couldn't give. Worthy of reciprocal partnership they couldn't provide. Worthy of someone who has capacity they lack. Your strength proved your worth, proved you deserve better than what they gave you. And proving you deserve better is what made them crazy in love with you. Made them finally recognize what they had. Made them see your value that was invisible while you were present, because defended position minimizes value while possessing it. Your choosing yourself proved you're a person of exceptional worth. The proof is what allowed them to finally love you, because loving you now feels like honoring someone worthy rather than being trapped by someone needy. Why the love only becomes accessible. After loss, the psychological mechanism that makes presence threatening and absence safe. Understanding why the avoidant can only access deep love after the person is gone reveals the fundamental limitation that makes their love insufficient for actual relationship. Loving someone present requires sustained vulnerability. Their wounded system can't maintain vulnerability long enough to sustain real-time love. Real relationship requires sustained vulnerability, requires being emotionally available consistently, requires showing up for partner's needs regularly, requires maintaining intimacy over time through ups and downs, requires vulnerability that doesn't close when things feel hard. The sustained nature of required vulnerability is what the avoidant can't access. Can access vulnerability in moments, can have moments of openness, of connection, of feeling deeply, but can't sustain it, can't maintain the vulnerability consistently enough to create functional relationship. The inability to sustain vulnerability is wound-driven. Wounds taught them. Vulnerability leads to hurt. Intimacy leads to abandonment. Letting people close creates danger. These teachings make sustained vulnerability feel impossible, feel like threat their system must protect against, so they can access vulnerability briefly but can't sustain it. Can love in moments but can't maintain love across time in ways relationship requires. Your presence demanded sustained vulnerability, demanded they maintain emotional availability, demanded they keep showing up, demanded they sustain the vulnerability relationship requires. The demand, even though you weren't consciously demanding, just existing in relationship with them, was what their system couldn't meet, was what made loving you while present feel impossible. But loving you while absent requires no sustained vulnerability, requires no showing up, requires no maintaining anything. They can feel intensely without having to act on the feeling, can love deeply without having to sustain the vulnerability that love would require if you were present. Your absence makes love accessible because absence eliminates the requirement for sustained vulnerability their wounded system can't provide. Absence creates safety through eliminating expectation. They can love you when loving doesn't require them to be different than they are. During relationship, loving you felt like it required them to change, required them to be more emotionally available, more vulnerable, more present, more capable of reciprocal partnership. The requirement to be different felt threatening, felt like loving you meant having to become someone they weren't, having to develop capacity they didn't have, having to transform in ways that felt impossible. The requirement made loving feel like trap, like choosing to love you meant choosing to fail at being who love would require them to be. But your absence eliminates all requirements. You're gone. Loving you doesn't require them to be anything, doesn't require change, doesn't require development of capacity, doesn't require transformation. They can love you exactly as they are, defended, wounded, incapable of sustained vulnerability. Because loving someone absent doesn't require being different, doesn't require meeting needs, doesn't require showing up. Can love from defended position because defended position is sustainable. When person being loved isn't there expecting the love to translate into partnership. Your absence creates safety by eliminating expectation, by making love possible without requirement to be different, by allowing them to love you while remaining exactly who they are, without that remaining destroying relationship because there's no relationship to destroy. The safety of loving without expectation is what makes the love accessible, makes it intense, makes it feel safe enough to allow into consciousness and feeling. The loss activated every wound while proving wounds were protecting against wrong thing, creating crisis that's rewriting their defensive programming. Your leaving activated their wounds, activated abandonment wound. Person they loved left them. Activated powerlessness wound, couldn't control the leaving. Activated unworthiness wound, patterns drove away someone valuable. All the wounds their defensive system exists to protect them from got activated simultaneously through your leaving. The activation should have triggered more defending, should have made them close down more, should have reinforced the defended position. But something different happened. The activation combined with specific evidence. You left because of their patterns. You thrived after leaving. You proved you were strong enough to choose yourself. This evidence taught their system something their wounds couldn't accept. The wounds were protecting against wrong thing. Wounds taught them vulnerability leads to abandonment, but evidence proves defending against vulnerability leads to abandonment. Wounds taught them intimacy is dangerous, but evidence proves refusing intimacy costs them the relationship. Wounds taught them they need to protect themselves, but evidence proves protecting themselves is what destroyed what they needed protecting. The contradiction between what wounds taught and what evidence proved is creating crisis in their system, is rewriting defensive programming, is making their system recognize that defended position they built to prevent wounds from being activated is actually what created the activation. Your leaving while thriving proved their defenses were defending against wrong thing. The recognition is creating the crazy love, is making their system allow love it previously defended against, because system is recognizing defending against love is what cost them love. The crisis of wounds being activated while simultaneously being proven wrong about what to defend against is what's making love accessible, is breakthrough in their defended programming that's allowing feeling they couldn't access before. The uncomfortable mirror turn, if you're considering returning, because they finally love you, examine what you're actually seeking. But if you're reading this thinking, maybe you should return, because they finally love you. Examine what you're actually seeking. Why does their love matter now? Why does knowing they're crazy in love with you create temptation to return? Because if you've genuinely moved on, if you're genuinely building life without them, if you're genuinely choosing yourself, their love shouldn't matter, shouldn't create temptation, shouldn't make you consider returning. The fact that their love tempts you reveals you're still seeking something from them, still needing their love to validate your worth, still wanting their recognition to prove you are valuable, still hoping they're finally loving you means relationship could work if you gave them another chance. This seeking means you haven't fully let go, haven't fully healed, haven't fully recognized that their love isn't what you need. What you need is partner who can love you while you're present, who can sustain vulnerability relationship requires, who can reciprocate in real time, not just feel deeply after you're gone. Their crazy love after loss doesn't prove they can do this. Proves opposite. Proves they can only access love when person is absent, and love requires nothing from them. Proves their love requires your unavailability. Proves loving you while having you is still impossible for them. Don't mistake their intense feeling for their readiness. Don't confuse their crazy love with their capacity. They love you desperately now. And desperate love that requires your absence is not love that can sustain relationship, is love that proves they're still incapable of what relationship requires. Stop seeking their love as validation. Stop considering return because they finally feel what you wanted them to feel. Their feeling doesn't create their capacity. Their love doesn't prove their readiness. Their crazy, intense, consuming love proves they can access feeling when feeling requires nothing, which proves they still can't access sustained vulnerability that relationship requires. Use their love as confirmation you are valuable. Then move forward to find someone who can love you while having you, not someone who can only love you after losing you. What the crazy love actually reveals about their wounds, why the intensity is evidence of limitation, not transformation. The avoidant's intense love after loss reveals specific things about their psychology. Understanding what the intensity actually means helps you see it as limitation rather than as readiness for relationship. The intensity reveals love was always there, but always defended against. Proving capacity for feeling exists, but capacity for sustainable vulnerability doesn't. They're crazy in love with you. The intensity proves something. The love was always there, wasn't created by the loss, was present throughout relationship, but was defended against, was underneath their emotional unavailability, was beneath their withdrawal, was existing behind their defended position the entire time. The love existed. The defending prevented them from accessing it, or expressing it, or acting on it. Now, the defending has dropped enough to allow the love. The love that was always there is flooding through. The intensity is all the suppressed feeling finally being allowed, all the defended against love finally being accessed. This proves capacity for feeling exists. They can feel deeply, can love intensely, can experience profound emotion, but the intensity also proves capacity for feeling doesn't equal capacity for sustainable vulnerability. They can feel love, can't sustain the vulnerability that expressing that love in relationship would require, can't access the emotion when emotion requires nothing, can't access the sustained vulnerability that emotion would require if translated into partnership. The intensity is evidence of feeling capacity, not evidence of relationship capacity. The distinction is crucial. They can feel everything, can't do anything with the feeling that requires sustained vulnerability. The crazy love proves feeling exists, doesn't prove capacity exists to translate feeling into functional reciprocal partnership. The intensity is crisis response, massive feeling activated by massive loss, not sustainable emotional availability developed through therapeutic work. The love is intense, overwhelming, all-consuming. The intensity feels significant, feels like evidence of genuine transformation, feels like maybe they've finally accessed depth of feeling that could create real relationship. But examine what's creating the intensity. Is crisis? Is massive loss activating massive feeling? Is their system flooding with emotion? Because loss triggered all wounds simultaneously and overwhelmed the defenses that usually keep emotion suppressed. Crisis creates intensity, creates feelings that wouldn't be accessible in non-crisis state, creates overwhelming emotion that feels transformative but is actually just response to unbearable situation. The intensity is crisis-driven, is temporary state that exists because loss created unbearable pain that overwhelmed their defended system. Once crisis passes, once they adjust to the loss, once pain becomes manageable, once system restabilizes, the intensity will fade. The overwhelming feeling will diminish. The defenses will return. The intensity is crisis response, not sustainable emotional availability. Is temporary flooding of feeling created by crisis, overwhelming defenses, not permanent transformation of defended system through therapeutic work. Don't mistake crisis intensity for sustainable capacity. Intensity proves they're having crisis response to unbearable loss. Doesn't prove they've developed sustainable capacity for emotional availability that would persist beyond crisis state into actual partnership functioning. The intensity focuses on what they lost, not on who you are. The love is self-focused mourning of their loss, not other-focused recognition of your wholeness. Listen to what they're actually loving. Are they loving you as whole person? Loving your complexity, your flaws, your needs, your full humanity? Or are they loving what you provided them? Loving the understanding you gave, loving the patience you showed, loving the acceptance you offered, loving how you made them feel. The focus reveals whether love is about you or about them. Real love sees whole person, sees the good and the difficult, sees the strengths and the needs, sees the person fully and loves all of it. But the avoidance intense love after loss is typically self-focused, is loving what they lost, loving what you provided to them, loving the feeling they experienced through you, loving the version of you that existed to serve their needs. Not loving you as whole person with your own needs they'd need to meet. The self-focus proves the love is mourning, is them mourning what they lost, not loving who you are, is grief about their loss, not recognition of your worth independent of what you provided them. The distinction matters. Mourning their loss doesn't create capacity to honor your wholeness. Loving what you gave them doesn't create capacity to give back what you need. Their intense love is typically love of what they lost, not love of who you are. The self-focus proves the love is about them, about their loss, their pain, their grief, not about you as whole person they now recognize they should honor. Why returning to someone who loves you after loss would repeat the patterns, how the crazy love disappears when availability returns. Understanding what would happen if you return to someone whose crazy love is based on your absence helps you resist the temptation to mistake their intensity for readiness. The intensity would fade as soon as you were accessible, proving the love requires your absence, making relationship impossible. They love you intensely now, while you're gone, while you're unavailable, while loving you requires nothing from them. What would happen if you returned? If you made yourself accessible again? If you gave them another chance based on the intensity of their love? The intensity would fade as soon as you were accessible, because your accessibility would recreate the conditions that made loving you threatening during original relationship. Your presence would create pressure for reciprocation, would create expectation of sustained vulnerability, would create requirement that intense feeling translate into consistent showing up. All the things that made loving you impossible during relationship would return. And with those things returning, the intensity would fade. The crazy, overwhelming love would diminish as their defended system recognized. Loving you while having you requires sustained vulnerability we can't access. The fading would devastate both people, would devastate you because the intensity that made you return would disappear, would devastate them because they'd lose the love again, but this time lose it while you're present, creating shame about their inability to sustain what they felt so intensely while you were absent. The fading proves the love requires your absence, proves intensity is dependent on loving, requiring nothing, proves relationship is impossible, because relationship would recreate the conditions that make intensity impossible to maintain. Don't return based on intensity. Intensity will fade when you return, will prove itself to be dependent on conditions, your absence, that relationship can't maintain. Your needs would trigger their defenses again, recreating the dynamic where they withdraw from intimacy your presence creates. You'd return. The intensity would initially feel good, would feel like finally getting what you always wanted. But then your needs would emerge because you're human with needs. need for emotional availability, need for consistent presence, need for reciprocal partnership. The needs are reasonable, are what relationship requires, but your needs would trigger their defenses, would trigger same way they triggered during original relationship. Your need for emotional availability would make them feel pressured. Your need for consistent presence would make them feel suffocated. Your need for reciprocal partnership would make them feel inadequate. The triggering would activate their wounds, would make vulnerability feel dangerous again, would make intimacy feel threatening, would recreate the defended position. They'd start withdrawing, start creating distance, start being emotionally unavailable. All the patterns that destroyed original relationship would return because the patterns are wound-driven and wounds aren't healed just because they had intense feeling while you were absent. Your presence with your legitimate needs would trigger their wounds. Wounded response is defending. Defending destroys intimacy. The cycle would repeat, would prove that intense love after loss doesn't equal capacity for sustained vulnerability during relationship. Your returning would recreate the dynamic, would prove their crazy love can't survive the reality of your presence. With needs that require them to sustain vulnerability, their wounds make unsustainable. They take you for granted again. Presence makes value invisible in their defended system, recreating the pattern where exceptional becomes ordinary. During original relationship, they took you for granted, took your exceptional nature for granted by treating exceptional as ordinary. Your leaving made exceptional visible, made them see what you were through losing what you provided. The visibility created the crazy love. But what would happen if exceptional became present again? If you returned and your exceptional nature was once again accessible, their defended system would make exceptional invisible again, would minimize your value through possession, making value seem ordinary, would take for granted what seemed irreplaceable while absent, but seems guaranteed while present. The pattern isn't conscious, is how their defended system functions. Defended system minimizes value while possessing it to protect ego from guilt about not reciprocating value, makes exceptional seem ordinary, so not reciprocating exceptional treatment doesn't create shame. Your returning would make you accessible again. Accessibility would trigger the minimizing. The taking for granted would return, not immediately, but gradually as your presence became familiar again, as your exceptional nature became background noise again, as their system adjusted to having you and no longer needed to value you to cope with losing you. The taking for granted would recreate the original dynamic, would prove that their crazy love, while you're absent, doesn't create their capacity to honor you while you're present, would devastate you by proving that person who loved you desperately while losing you takes you for granted again, once having you. The pattern would repeat because pattern is driven by defended systems functioning, not by their feeling. Feeling changes based on your availability. Defended systems functioning doesn't change without sustained therapeutic work, addressing wounds that create the defending. The only condition where their crazy love might mean something, and why. Even then, it comes too late. There's one scenario where the avoidant's intense love after loss could indicate genuine transformation, but understanding this scenario helps you see why even best case comes too late to benefit you. If they use the intensity to motivate sustained therapeutic work, channeling the feeling into addressing the wounds, preventing them from sustaining the feeling, the crazy love could serve purpose, could create motivation, could drive them to finally address the wounds. If they take the intensity and use it to recognize, I love this person desperately, and I can't sustain this love and relationship because wounds prevent sustained vulnerability. Use it to seek help, to find attachment specialist, to do EMDR for trauma, to pursue somatic therapy for nervous system, to commit to years of uncomfortable work addressing wounds that create defended position, to actually transform instead of just feeling intensely. If the crazy love motivates sustained therapeutic work, not just starting therapy in crisis, but maintaining therapy for years, doing the uncomfortable work, actually transforming defended system through professional intervention, then the crazy love could indicate eventual capacity development, could result in them becoming capable of sustaining vulnerability, could create actual transformation where they develop capacity to love someone while having them, not just while losing them. This is possible, is best case scenario, is them using the crisis of crazy love to finally do the work. If this happens, the transformation serves their future, serves whoever they encounter after years of sustained work, creates actual capacity development, comes too late to benefit you. Even with transformation, timing means it's too late. You've moved on, they've changed for their future, not for a relationship with person whose loss motivated the change. Let's say, best case, they do the work, years of sustained therapy, genuine transformation, development of capacity for sustained vulnerability. They become capable of relationship, capable of reciprocal partnership, capable of honoring exceptional partner without taking them for granted. This transformation is real, is genuine result of years of work, and is too late. Too late for relationship with you. You've moved on, built life without them, healed from what relationship cost you, found someone who has capacity for partnership without requiring years of work to develop capacity, or happily building alone, or so far forward that their transformation is just interesting information about someone who's no longer relevant to your current life. The timing makes even genuine transformation irrelevant to you. They transformed for their future, for whoever they meet after transformation is complete. Not for you, not for relationship with person whose loss created the crisis that motivated the transformation. You're gone. The transformation comes too late to restore what was lost before transformation occurred. Their crazy love, even if it motivates genuine transformation, serves their future relationships, doesn't serve past relationship with you, doesn't create their right to access you, doesn't mean you should return because they finally did the work. You motivated the work by leaving. You should stay gone to honor the boundary that created the motivation. Their work benefits them and their future. Your staying gone benefits you and your freedom. The final truth about why they're crazy in love with you after you left. They're crazy in love with you, intensely, overwhelmingly, desperately. The love is real, is more intense than anything they felt during a relationship, is consuming in ways that prove love was always there beneath defending. And the love exists because you did something. You stopped being available. You proved you don't need them. You chose yourself. These actions created the conditions where their defended system could finally allow the love, could finally access feeling that was always there, but always defended against. Your unavailability eliminated pressure for reciprocation that made loving feel dangerous. Your independence destroyed fear that loving creates dependence. Your strength proved you're worthy while triggering their core wound of powerlessness. All of it combined to make loving you safe for first time. Safe because safe means loving someone who's gone and requires nothing. Not safe meaning capable of sustaining vulnerability relationship with you would require. The crazy love reveals their limitation, not their transformation. Reveals they can feel intensely when feeling requires nothing. Can't sustain vulnerability when feeling would require translation into consistent showing up. Reveals love was always there. Capacity to sustain love in relationship wasn't and isn't there without sustained therapeutic work. Reveals they can love you desperately after losing you. Can't love you functionally while having you unless wounds are addressed through years of professional intervention. The crazy love is evidence of feeling capacity and evidence of relationship incapacity existing simultaneously. Both real, both permanent without sustained work. The intensity should validate you, should prove you were worthy, were valuable, were exceptional, should confirm you deserve to be loved this intensely during relationship when love would have benefited you, should prove problem was their capacity, not your worth. Use validation to confirm leaving was right choice. To recognize someone who can only love you after losing you isn't someone who can honor you while having you. To understand their crazy love is gift to your confidence about your worth, not invitation to return to someone whose love requires your absence. They're crazy in love with you because you left, proved you don't need them, chose yourself. The love is real and insufficient, is intense and unsustainable, is desperate and dependent on conditions. Your absence, that relationship can't maintain. Don't return to intensity. Don't mistake feeling for capacity. Don't confuse their crisis response with their readiness. They love you desperately now. Let them love you desperately from distance. Let the love be validation of your worth without being invitation to return. Their crazy love proves you were right to leave, proves you're exceptional enough to create intense feeling, proves their limitation that makes them capable of feeling but incapable of sustaining. All of this confirms leaving was right choice. Staying gone is right choice. Building forward with someone who can love you while having you is right choice. They're crazy in love with you because you left. Stay left. Let them love desperately from distance. You build extraordinarily in freedom. Their crazy love and your freedom both happening, both permanent. Only yours determines your future. Choose freedom. Choose building. Choose partner who can love you present, not someone who can only love you absent. That's truth. That's answer. That's life their crazy love accidentally validated you deserve. Live it.